All right. So I don't know if we're live. It sure looks like we're live. And I've got a headset on because that's the only way to know to do this phone call. Let's see. I need to do a couple things real quick before we get started. We're going to have a special guest on in about, in about 6 minutes. We're going to be covering a special guest talking about our book review of An American Sickness, which you should see on the screen if you're watching the live. And in the meantime, I may have a second guest joining us, but I got to get her some information to see if she is going to join us tonight as well. But I'm having a problem finding my frickin'... I may be alone at the moment. We'll see. How come I can't find my account information, for fuck's sake? Sorry, I'm live but not ready. So we're going to be going live here in about 5 minutes. All right. So do I have anybody on view? I got somebody viewing, it looks like. So there is at least somebody here to listen to this, but it doesn't matter because it'll be recorded. I do hope that I have a good sound. So if I could get any kind of chat just to let me know that you can hear me, at least for my part, and then hopefully when my guest comes on, you'll hear my guest, and then we'll be set as can be. Excuse me. Wow. About got a few more minutes still, about 4 more minutes before we get started. So going a little early, just getting things going. Maybe I can trim this up hopefully in the studio afterwards to cut out this early part for those who want to watch the replay. Otherwise, yeah, I'm learning all this stuff as we go. So now I have nobody watching. Damn, this is going to be interesting. But again, it's recorded, so I guess you'll hear it afterwards. Small channel. And not a lot of, and it's late for a lot of people, so it is what it is. I'll be by myself. So let's see. I gotta see if I can figure it out. In the remaining minutes I have, oh, there's the call option. Okay, that's gonna get her taken care of. And what else? I just don't know why I'm having a hard time finding my stupid profile name so I can have somebody add me as a friend, because every time I click on myself, it's not telling me. For fuck's sake. Wow. There we go. All right, looks like my friend is on Discord. I'm going to go ahead and place the call to get us a little started ahead of time.
Hello.
Hello, Angie. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure that our audio is working. We're like a minute away from my official start time, and what I don't have is enough viewers. I have like 3. I gotta get somebody to tell me that they can actually hear me and confirm that anything that I'm saying or you're saying can be heard. So if anybody that's of the 3 of you hanging out right now, by the way, Angie, like there may be only 3 now, but later on this will be available for a long time. So people may pick this up as their channel grows. So be careful to think that whatever you say might come back to haunt you in the future.
Okay.
Also, I had an interesting, I don't know that this is bad form, and I wouldn't do this if I didn't know you so well, but I had somebody who told me that they're going to watch tonight when they get done taking care of something first, so they're not going to be here at the beginning. And she also happens to be in kind of medical billing kind of thing. And I was like, I had no idea. I said, maybe we can get you on here. And so I don't know if that would be rude and bad form, but I kind of said, hey, that might be kind of cool, but we'll see. We'll save that for the later part of the night because she won't be on it first anyways. All right, so it actually is the top of the hour, and so nobody's given me the heads up that we're doing good. However, go ahead and say something. So, oh yeah, go ahead and speak, Angie.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Hi.
perfect. I just wanted to make sure. All I wanted to do is make sure that you had audio, so that I could, I could see that the level of recording is coming in. So I'm going to trust that we're in good shape. So let me kind of explain a little bit about what we're doing and why we're doing this. And I don't know because there was the delay earlier, Angie. You might be able to pull up YouTube and look at my screen that I'm broadcasting live if you found me, and I can help you with that. The only reason that might be helpful for you is to, you know what, I can share my screen in Discord, I think. Because you might want to see the page. I'm going to have the book open with pages that I've highlighted to remind me of things I want to ask you about. Unfortunately, you can't really share your highlights as easy, but let me see if I could share my screen with you. Share my screen and go live. I've got my system is going to be text. Can you see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't see me, but you can see the book cover, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so maybe as we're going through and stuff like that, you can see where I'm at. And if you happen to, I don't know if you took notes or highlights or whatever, but if you see that I've passed something you had a point about, we could always back up a little bit. This is going to be pretty informal, but let me introduce you a little bit and then what we're doing a little bit, and then we'll get just kind of into it. Again, this is pretty informal, so as some of you know, or you're watching this channel, one of the playlists that I have is called Luigi's Bookshelf, and we've been reviewing a book called An American Sickness by Elisabeth Rosenthal. And the reason that we're doing that is there was a special about Luigi Mangione, a documentary that various writings that allegedly written by Luigi Mangione said that he had grievances against the healthcare system, but that he wasn't not educated enough. He wasn't the right person to convey all the problems with the healthcare system, and that if you wanted a better understanding of problems in the healthcare system, you should read Elisabeth Rosenthal's book, American Sickness, and or watch Michael Moore's documentary Sicko about the healthcare system. And so based on that, I asked informally if some people were interested in having a book review and reading together An American Sickness by Elisabeth Rosenthal, with the mindset that if this book was something Luigi used as informing his position and his grievances with the healthcare system, again, Luigi Mangione is allegedly the suspect. He has not had his day in court, and so devil's advocates presumes that a person is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And so we're going to assume that he's innocent. However, if he's not innocent, and that is a very possible thing, then we might want to understand what motivated him to do so and the grievances. And in either case, whether he did or he didn't, I personally believe that that it's the bigger topic that we should have is whether he did it or somebody else did it. What compelled somebody to be so angry at the medical system, at our healthcare system in America, that they would go to such extremes? And so that's kind of what we've been doing as a book discussion, is educating ourselves of what went wrong in the American healthcare system. Now, Angie's specialty, if you will, is that she's been working at least 15 years in medical billing. She started out in the billing offices doing processing of claims, and specifically working with denials of claims. And she passed a CPC exam, which, by the way, you're going to have to explain to me and the audience what the CPC exam is here in a second. She became a certified coder. Then she moved into the IT side of the house, and now she's working as an analyst in the IT side of the house. And for Americans, most of us are familiar with a system that's a portal to your healthcare called MyChart. And so Angie would be pretty intimate with the system behind the scenes of MyChart, the portal that we all use. Most of us Americans, I think something like 190 million people use MyChart in some form or another, and most of those are Americans. So that would place us as almost half of America, essentially, if you just do the math, as using or being familiar with the software that Angie has some intimate experience with. So, Angie, why don't you explain a little bit about that CPC exam and your history, and cover stuff that I didn't to explain your history?
Yeah, so CPC are coders, current professional coders. And what that is when anytime a provider submits claims to the insurance, they go out as numerical codes, essentially. And the coder's job is to review what that doctor is doing to make sure that it's appropriate to be going out to the insurance, that it was an appropriate level, like for the level of evaluation that they did, that they're not bundling services or unbundling services, like things that would normally be grouped together and paid under one code, making sure that it's that they're not trying to bill out two, which would be like an overbill kind of situation. And there's a test that you have to be able to pass in order to become a coder, and I had passed that test very shortly before moving over into IT. So
and who, I mean, this may be a difficult question, but I mean, who are they particularly trying to protect? The hospitals against fraudulent charges, the consumer against fraudulent charges, or who are, what is the oversight of the coding and making sure coding is correct? Who's the one that's the concern, or the client that's being protected?
It seems to mostly be that they don't want to trigger an insurance audit, that they're in compliance with insurance, especially where Medicare is involved, making sure that that everything is compliant with their regulations for billing out.
It seems to me peripherally that Medicare seems to drive a whole bunch of everything in the whole entire health industry. Is that true? Or?
That would be pretty true. There are several large payers who just make it a point to follow Medicare guidelines. So if Medicare has guidelines about how a certain code can be billed out, what they will allow, what they won't allow, a lot of the other payers will just follow suit.
So, when we were talking about coding, this is one of the things that I don't know how far you've gotten in the book, but one of the things that I keep telling people is the overarching theme throughout this entire book is that every single time Congress or somebody tries to enact curbs or restrictions on the exploding healthcare costs in America, they just find new ways to game the system. And so when you were talking about, for example, making sure things are getting coded correctly and that things aren't getting lumped in correctly, I keep thinking to myself of the whole industry as a whole. Every single time something goes in place to try to stop the basically crookery in a way and exploding costs, they just find new ways to code stuff or put it in a different way or build it a different way and make even more money, even when it was designed to try to stop that. That seems to be a common theme of the book.
That we've kind of talked about it. Oh.
Go ahead.
Like, especially with like the inpatient and observation codes.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and even.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
So yeah, the more rules there are about that kind of thing. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of a specific example that we go into, but like we can look into the inpatient versus observation codes. Like there are very specific rules into like when a patient can be considered an inpatient versus observation. This is someone who comes into the hospital, who comes into the ED, emergency department, and it's whether or not they are being admitted.
Yeah, there was a chapter, and I don't remember if it's a chapter you've read or not yet, but there was a chapter that talked about the whole not admitting people was, and just putting them under observation. The way I read it was, and maybe you don't, I don't have it right, but that hospitals would get dinged, for example, if a person came back after being treated and they came back to the hospital for the same exact thing within 30 days. And so they found a loophole or a workaround by saying, well, they never really got admitted. They were just under observation. And it allowed them to avoid, when they knew somebody was going to possibly still have an issue, of just saying, well, we never admitted them. They're just under observation. And it was more ended up protecting them from getting dinged for having that person come back.
Yeah, and like I can't speak as to whether or not hospitals do that, but I can say for sure that I do know of that ding that you're talking about. Medicare or Medicaid was concerned that people that like a diagnosis was getting missed or something, so that they were at the hospital, they were admitted, the hospital said, yes, you're fine, and discharges them, and then it turns out no, they weren't fine, and so they come back, and so that was a concern for Medicare, Medicaid, and so they put that rule into place saying, yeah, if you guys are consistently doing this, we are going to penalize you. We're going to start taking away some of our quality control stuff that we do in the background. And yeah, whether the thought process behind that might have been, we're trying to protect the patient, or we're trying to protect our bottom line, because what does a cost do for a readmit? But as what ended up happening was the exact opposite, because now the hospitals are just, well, if we're not admitting them, we can't get dinged because we're not sending an admit code out on that claim. We're sending an observation code out on that claim. If that makes sense.
And for me, what it feels like is just, again, I don't know that that's in the best interest of the consumer. It seems like it's in the best interest of, the financial interest, to make sure that they don't get dinged financially for something. So I don't know that does it have a benefit to the customer, to the consumer? I don't know. It seems like a lot of the stuff is what is going to protect them from lawsuits, what's going to, get paid by insurance, and it has to do more with the money side rather than whether or not a person gets the coverage that they need. But
yeah, no, I see what you're saying, because yeah, I think the intent behind putting the rule in place was, and that we're trying to keep this from happening. But as to keep the bounce backs is what they call that, is we're trying to keep the bounce backs from happening. We want, if a patient is admitted, that they're going to get seen all the way through. Like, this is from insurance, from government. But as what ended up happening was that now there's just that extra scrutiny into, are we actually admitting the patient or not? And yeah, it's not benefiting the patient at all.
Yeah, and like I said, it just feels like that's the common theme that this book is representing, is everything that starts out for trying to curb abuse, trying to make sure it's done right, looking out for the consumer, ends up being turned around and ends up somehow benefiting somebody financially instead of the actual consumer. I did want to point out real quick before we get into it, because I don't want to keep you forever tonight, and I know you got to work in the morning. Some of us are retired and we don't have to do that shit so much anymore. But anyways, but so before we get into the actual chapter and some of the notes that maybe you made and some of the notes I made, I wanted to refresh a little bit about how I got you looped into this discussion. And that was because when early on, and I know that your interest is not so much in the Luigi Mangione side, but in the early stages of the Luigi Mangione situation, he supposedly had a website or an X account that had a Pokemon, and the number was 286, and he had exactly 286 followers. And people started looking into that, and they saw that 286 was a denial code for insurance billing, which basically was a code that said your time for appeals has ran out. So to explain the process as I understood it was a person. So it's becoming practice now, standard practice for insurance to automatically reject, and they reject more and more. This is what United Healthcare was accused of doing, and the reason perhaps why someone decided to kill Brian Thompson was they were leading the charge in the number of denials of claims, and they had an automated system run by AI that was rejecting more and more, just automatically rejecting, and then making people have to fight and go through a process to get their claim paid. And so then when they would fight it, they would basically delay that time, and then literally they would say things like, "Oh, we lost your paperwork. You must not have submitted it," or whatever. And if you fought back and said, "No, I did submit it," well, we must have lost it. But 286 code, you went past your limit of time for appeals. The appeals passed, you lose. And so I remember talking to you about the 286 thing and saying, "Is that a true code?" And at first, I remember you said something to me of the effect of, "Well, there's a lot of codes, and I'm not sure that's just a generic code that everybody uses." But then you looked into it and you're like, "Well, shit, there's 286, and it is the denial of claim code." So that's kind of how I looped you in. I was like, "Well, shit, you know a lot about this, but can you explain whether or not I got that correctly? What was the 286 code, and what was your experience with that?"
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because, again, when the insurance and the hospitals communicate, they use like the numeric codes and everything like that. And each payer can have its own set of numeric codes, which is like, well, that's just a numeric code. It could mean anything. But as you pointed out earlier, Medicare tends to drive a lot of stuff. So Medicare has its own code sets, and 90% of the payers out there will just use those codes, the same as Medicare, just because it makes it easier. And so I did go look up the 286 code when we had that conversation.
Yeah.
And yes, 286 is a denial code for timely filing for an appeal. And yeah, so what that means is the claim was denied for whatever reason, and we did not hear back from you in X amount of days. And different payers will have different amount of days for timely filing. I still think that might be a little bit of a stretch, just because that timely filing for appeals, typically when you look at like the paperwork, they usually call it like an explanation of benefits that comes back from your insurance company after they've paid something to your provider. There are a couple different ways that they will report back a denial code. One is where they will essentially deny it and write it off. Two is that they will deny it, but then the hospital will appeal it and try to get it repaid. And then three is to where they will deny it and say it's patient responsibility. And the insurance companies are pretty strict, and you run into those compliance issues that if that denial code doesn't say that it's patient responsibility, then the hospitals legally can't bill the patient for that. And that timely filing for appeals is one that can't be put back to the patient.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not quite sure if that's really a valid thing. But the code itself, 286, is that was accurate.
Yeah, it seemed one of those things that seemed to be not a coincidence that Luigi did that on purpose to bring attention to the number. So then the question becomes why, and maybe maybe if Luigi did leave that number, maybe Luigi didn't understand the backside of it so much to know what it exactly means. But it was interesting enough to be like, is it a coincidence that a healthcare CEO is shot 286 is the Pokemon number, the number of followers on his account. Those are all really weird coincidences. Is it some kind of reference to? And again, the bullet casings that were left behind at the scene had the words deny, defend, depose, or deny, delay, depose written in the bullet casings, which was basically a reference to another book written about the health insurance industry. So it seemed to be that the shooter, whether it was Luigi or not, had a beef against the health insurance industry. And that's why, we're reading this book in American Sickness, is to kind of say, because one of the titles, the subtitles of this book is how healthcare became big business and how you can take it back. And one thing that I can tell you right now, and neither one of us, you or I, are probably that far in the book, which is that I really want to get to the last half of the book, is what can I fucking do about it? Because I'm getting sick to my stomach seeing how bad this system is, but what can we really do about it? Because it seems to me it's like it's a system that's so complicated that even people in the system have a hard time understanding what's going on. So how does the consumer have any chance in hell of fighting back against that kind of system? But what I want to do is ask you how you want to do this. Like, did you take some quotes that you have some comments about, and want to just kind of pull some things out? Do you want me to say, hey, I had a question about this? I mean, how do you want to do that back and forth a little bit?
Yeah, no, let's go through your questions and see where that takes us.
All right, I'm going to pull up on the website here. I'm going to go. Now, are we just going to deal primarily with Chapter 2 or the Chapter 1 and 2 with the Age of Insurance? Because I have quotes in both places. I'm
partway through Chapter 3, so we could go through any of it.
Oh, you're up to Chapter 3. Okay. I thought you said you wanted to start at Chapter 3. So let me just skim through. I don't know if you're watching my screen anymore, but I'm going to skim through and see.
Yeah.
If you take a look at my highlight places, and I don't call it out, but if you see something that you might want to talk about, let me know. There was something in here I know that I wanted to. So yeah, they were talking a little bit about how, like, just down the street from a place, you can have a completely different price, like just 2 blocks down, and a massive different price. I don't know that that's worth talking about or not, unless you have an insight into that. Okay, I'm almost there. Give me a second. I'm just looking through here. So this first chapter was talking about the history of insurance, and there was a lot of talk about Blue Cross and the not-for-profit model, right? So the health insurance kind of started out not-for-profit, and then over time, and I think you and I talked about this a little bit just recently, about seeing some hospitals, traditionally the hospitals that have names like Providence or St. Mary's or whatever, have been run and associated with the Catholic Church and have been run as not-for-profits, but then they point out in these chapters that they're huge profit-making entities. It's just that now they don't call their profits, they call it budget excess, and then they use it to buy lavish lobbies and things like that. Do you have any, I mean, that's not really your billing area, but do you have any insights or comments about that?
Not really anything other than to say that what I've seen backs that up. Like, I've seen the same kind of things, to where
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to where I've seen, well, like, okay, like, this hospital is now a nonprofit hospital. That means we can only make so much money, and if we make too much money, like, what else are we going to do with this overage kind of thing? I have seen some of that.
One of the things I was going to ask you is, since you had been at this for like 15 years, I don't know if, did you happen to have any feeling or insight or metrics? Probably you can't talk about the metrics, but did you have any feeling or insight that you saw the number of denials increasing over your 15 years? Did you see that increasingly things are getting denied in the healthcare system claims?
I don't know that I have seen increasing denials, but I have seen an increasing level of complication as to what is getting, how things are being submitted and what the payers are requiring and stuff like that. And with the idea of, the more complicated things get, the more likely people are to give up on pursuing that payment.
Yeah. And I don't know that you would have any insight into this or comments, but one of the things I thought was interesting too was the whole Blue Cross Blue Shield and how they eventually allowed some of the smaller ones to get gobbled up, and there was, like, and if I remember right, and hopefully you do know this to explain it, there's Anthem Blue Health, and then there's like Blue Cross, and one of them's not for profit, and one is now for profit. Do you know what the difference is on that?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I was reading through this, and it's originally started off that you have Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and one was essentially like hospital stays, and the other one was more for like clinic, more regular type stuff, but which again models after your Medicare Part A, Part B. For people who aren't familiar with that, when you reach that age, what is it, like 67 now, everyone gets Medicare Part A, and that covers like your hospital stays, your facility bills, and you can opt in to Medicare Part B. When you opt in, you have to pay for it, and that's what covers professional fees, doctor's fees, clinic visits, stuff like that. And so when Blue Cross Blue Shield was first formed, it was formed under the same model. And then as things started going on and they had to change their business model, they created Anthem, and Anthem is the one that's for profit.
That's what I thought, and that was the multiple thing, or the thing I was kind of remembering the most is that Anthem Blue Shield became kind of the for-profit side of the blues. I think they called them, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Anthem became kind of like the profit-making side, or the one that was allowed to make profit, whereas the other one wasn't, still technically a non-profit. I'm trying to see, and again, if you have any comments that I'm missing that maybe you want to talk about, let me know. I'm just trying to hit some things that those, the history of Blue Cross Blue Shield really isn't into your medical billing kind of side, so maybe it's more in chapter 2 that it gets into. And you're able to see the highlights on my screen as I'm going through, right? I'm probably moving pretty fast though.
Well, here's one highlight that you've got in here. It says, history shows that once a procedure is covered by insurance, the sticker price generally goes up because patients are largely insulated from the cost.
Yes. This is one of those things that I did want to say that probably know a lot about, because this is like that whole billing higher and then negotiated rates.
Yes, that is exactly where I was going with that. So, and I think this happens a lot because if there's a procedure that, to start off with, isn't covered, there is supposed to be an acknowledgement, like when you come into the hospital, to where the hospital is saying, like, this isn't going to be covered. And so if you walk into your doctor's office and they said, we want to do this procedure, but your insurance isn't going to cover it, and we're going to charge you $100, depending on what that is going to be, how important the procedure is to your overall health, $100 might seem worth it, $100 might not seem worth it. So they know that they can maybe get $100 out of it. Chances of people saying, no, I don't really need to do that, as the price goes up, like if they're going to charge $200 or $500, how many people are going to be like, yeah, no, I'm okay dealing with the pain or with the mole or whatever. So yeah, let's use mole removal, for example. It's elective. It's not something that's going to kill me if I get it done. Is it worth $100? Yeah. Is it worth $1,000? No, probably not. I live with the big ugly mole. So they know that they're not going to get patients paying out of pocket $1,000 for this, so they're charging $100 for it.
And this
now,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so now let's say a couple years down the road, insurance has decided to start picking it up. They're finding that it's turning into skin cancer later or whatever, so they're like, yeah, okay, we're going to pay to start getting these things removed because it's cheaper for us in the long run to remove a mole than it is to deal with cancer treatments down the road, so we're going to pick this up. So now hospitals are like, okay, insurance is picking this up, that means people now just have to pay their $20 copay. Now we can start charging that $1,000 because the insurance is paying us for it, and they might not pay $1,000, they might only pay $500, but we're now still getting $500 for this instead of the $100 that we were getting when we were just billing our patients. So yeah, they're going to go ahead and start charging more because they can.
Well, and this is what you just said was the crux of the problem that I feel like I don't know how to explain this, but like you and I talked about this a bit at length, which was the attitude is, what do you the consumer care what the bill is? Like they'll even kind of like the medical industry will even kind of be dismissive, like, why do you need to see what the bill is? What does it matter? Your copay is only $20 or your out of pocket is only $800. So who cares if we're billing you $60,000 for the procedure? You're capped at $800. So why do you care? And what I was trying to say is somebody's paying that somewhere, right? Premium prices are going up. Premiums in America are going up because this procedure didn't probably cost $60,000, but they can get away with charging $60,000. And even if the negotiated rate comes down to $40,000, if the actual cost of the procedure, what nobody in America is allowed to see what the actual cost was supposed to be, was something like $3,000, but they billed it at 80 and negotiated for 40, they're still ripping you off, and that somebody's going to pay the piper somewhere because somebody's grossly overpaid for that procedure. And so the attitude of, what do you care as a consumer? You only had to pay X number of dollars because you had insurance. I feel like we're missing the boat of how this is destroying the economy and destroying the whole system.
Well, yeah, because who does have to pay full price on that procedure?
The uninsured.
The uninsured, because there is no one to negotiate that rate down for them. And a lot of places will offer, say, a 20% self-pay discount or whatever, but that 20% self-pay discount doesn't add up to the same kind of write-offs that the insurance companies are going to get. Well, we've talked about my friend with the recent cancer issue.
Yeah.
That was a really great example. So he is self-employed, and so to try to afford the insurance premiums as a self-employed individual, they are crazy expensive, and they are crazy expensive for not even really all that great insurance. So he never bothered to get insurance, and he would just pay for things out of pocket as needed.
So I feel like I have to riff on something that you're skirting around, not because you're trying to avoid it, but and that is that, and this is going to sound political, so let's not make it about politics if we can do, but I want to say this. I feel like what you're talking about, the uninsured or the small businessman can't afford the medical costs, and so what it becomes a big protection for big business. Big business is the only people big corporations are the only ones who can afford the medical plans to cover you, and so what they've made it is you can't work for yourself because people just can't afford to work for themselves. They have to work for the big guys. And so to me it furthers class warfare, if you will, that the elite who have all the money are like, hey, if you want medical insurance, you're going to need to work for us. So give up on your dream of working for yourself, because you can't afford to work for yourself. You can't afford the medical costs. You can't be the small guy. You're going to have to come work for us, our big corporation, because we're the only place you're going to get health insurance from. So it just feels like it just screws the little guy out of even having a chance against big corporations.
I never thought of that before, but I agree. Wow, I never thought of it.
It's unfortunate because I think a lot of people choose to not go into business for themselves because they can't afford the insurance, or they take the risk and they're one accident, one cancer, one something away from being completely devastated and broke for the rest of their life.
Yeah. I mean, in his case, he bit the bullet, got insurance, and was able to go in and get the surgery that he needed after the first of the year. But he delayed cancer surgery for 2 months because he didn't have health insurance.
Right.
The damage that could have been done in that 2 months was scary. And then when he did actually start receiving the EOBs, the explanation of benefits from his insurance, he sat me down and was like, help me understand this, because they were going to charge him $30,000 for surgery. No radiation, no chemo, nothing like that. $30,000 just for the surgery for skin cancer. So it's not even like they were digging into organs or anything.
Yeah.
So $30,000 just for just for skin cancer. And when he looks at the EOB, so if he didn't have insurance, they were going to charge him the whole $30,000. Do you know how much they wrote off for the insurance contractual agreement? $28,000
of the 30,000.
Yeah. So and then his deductible, he paid $1,000 or whatever. So the insurance company only paid $1,000 on that, and they were going to charge him $30,000.
So what does that mean exactly? Does that mean that what it actually cost was probably closer to $1,000 because that's why the insurance company is willing to write off $28,000 or whatever of it, or is it just they're losing money on him and they're like, let's hope that we never have to cover that guy again because he costs us money?
They're not losing money, and I mean, realistically, like I said, it was skin cancer. I mean, it might have been a little bit more than the $2,800, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
And I know because I have been part of the conversations to figure out pricing, that hospitals are setting prices not based on cost so much as how much they think they can get back from the insurance companies.
Right, and that's a theme of this book all the way through. Is one, nobody really can nail down how much it costs to do something, and so they can just literally write whatever number they want, and it really means whatever we think we can get away with. So it's like, how do you quantify how much is it worth to remove a mole, for example? And so they can just make up a number, and if you have no idea what it really costs to remove a mole, you just go, well, I don't know, I'll pay half of that. So you negotiate kind of thing, and it may be wildly off. I've got on my screen here a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about, how EOB statements will talk about how much they saved you and brag, we saved you 96%. But then you have to wonder, it's just a shell game. The numbers are made up in the first place.
Yeah, that they saved you, that's the contractual adjustment that I was talking about. That is what they have already prearranged, as a discount with the hospital. And yeah, a lot of times when I've seen fees established for a year at a hospital, is what happens is Medicare driving the conversation, Medicare will publish its reimbursement rates, essentially, for what? Like that mole removal. And let's go back to that mole removal example, and let's say that Medicare has established that they are going to pay $100 for this mole removal, and they publish that to the hospitals. Well, different insurance companies will pay for that mole removal at different rates. And you might have some of them that will pay $150. You might have some of them that will pay $200. You might have some of them that will pay $80. So, but knowing that most of them are going to pay maybe $100, $150, and knowing that Medicare is saying that they're going to pay $100, I've seen several hospitals be like, well, we know that Medicare is going to pay us $100, so we're going to set the price at $250 just to make sure we get every dollar that we can from every insurance company who might be willing to pay us more. Right. Knowing that no insurance company is actually going to pay us $250, the most we're maybe going to get is that maybe $200. And we know that, but we're going to set it all the way up there just to make sure we capture every dollar. And again, the only person who's going to actually pay that $250 is the uninsured. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I remember one time I said, I was telling you about some price that they put on something. You're like, well, nobody pays that. That's not what you're actually going to pay. And then I'm as a consumer, I'm like, then why do we play this game? It's like freaking car salesmen. Like, nobody's going to pay what the list price on the car is. They know that you're always going to negotiate, and you're going to play this stupid game where, well, let me ask my manager if I can come down a few $1,000s on it. And it's already been marked up 400%. And so when they come down $1,000, they're not really doing you a favor. They're still making tons of money, but they play the game like, well, let me see. I just saved you $1,000. Like, you didn't save me shit. The thing was marked up 400%. But it's just
Yeah.
this game that we play. But anyways, I digress. So I'm at chapter 2, and I'm looking at the time, by the way, and I see that we're 38 minutes into it, and I didn't want to keep you more than an hour. So I want to see if we can hit some of the chapter 2 and kind of not, be here all night, because I could literally bitch about this all night long.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any highlights in here. Did you highlight anything yourself, by the way, or you just kind of want to look at my highlights, or?
I was reading this on a plane, so I didn't really get a whole lot of highlights, but I am happy to follow along with yours.
All right, so I did see a bunch of stuff about, we already talked a little bit about the whole actual build price versus negotiated, and like you said, they know that it's going to come in lower, but they'll bill higher, because that way, if they shoot for the moon, they know it's going to fall back to the rate that they're a minimum. But if that's the thing though, if it costs half of what they know is going to be paid, they're never going to bill half what is going to be paid. They're always going to shoot high, because why not? Like, right? They're going to pay X number of dollars. So even if you could do it for half the cost, you're still going to bill over the amount so that you can get the full amount back. Like, that's just good business, as they would say. And America is all about business. But anyways, let's see. No shareholders. Okay, I'm trying to find some things. I should have probably highlighted exactly what I wanted to ask you, but again, this is just kind of an impromptu. I thought it'd be fun to just get on and kind of riff a little bit about it, and maybe a more structured thing in the future might be good. But this is fun.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do this again.
Yeah, and then I could be a little bit more prepared as a host, instead of being like, hey, let me read shit to you. Let's see. Hold on. There was a section I wanted you to talk to about it. It was those units. What was the
RVU?
RPU?
RV.
RVU. Yeah, let's talk about that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, relative value unit. And essentially is what that is that is placing a value. That's what that value is for each code. So outside of the dollar amount that we're charging this, like, this is how much value we're placing on the doctor's time or the provider's time that was used to do this.
Right.
So the more complicated the procedure, the higher the RVU is attached to it, which would probably typically also mean that the higher the dollar amount would be attached to that charge. But
and I did find some paragraphs in the book that I've highlighted on the RVU situation, which is up on my screen too. But
yeah, I'm looking at it right now. But yeah, and so there are at least several hospitals, not all, who do compensate their doctors based on their RVUs that they have collected or performed or whatnot over the month. And so is what that means is, if that doctor is looking at care for you, are they looking at, is this the best solution for you, or is this what's going to put the most money into my pocket? Or even if it's not the doctor, even if it's if it has to do with some of those contracts and everything with the insurance companies and the hospitals, yeah, the RVU is essentially placing an importance on some procedures over others, and it becomes more about that RVU than about the patient's care.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, the gist of this book is everything is about the money and not about the patient's care. But that's, and that's obviously what the whole focus of this book is this, like, it's all about the money, which, and again, in America, it makes no surprise to me. We're a capitalistic society, and it leads to that whole, and I don't want to get political, the whole discussion about, socialized medicine versus a capitalistic, system. So, to me, I'm just thinking, I'm trying to be non-political, but in a system in which there's a profit motive for keeping me on pills, for example, or giving me procedures I don't need or whatever, because there's a financial incentive to do so, then I feel like that's a system in which you can't trust that system, because they are financially motivated to keep customers for life, especially in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, this is mostly, I'm talking about the pharmaceutical industry. They have a vested interest to make customers for life. And I think the United States, if I remember right, consumes 70% of the world's drugs. And so, like, everybody in America gets just prescribed a pill, because again, it's a for-profit system. And when people are allowed to make profit off of your health, then you have to wonder whether or not they're really caring about you or about what their bottom line is. And so I don't know if that speaks for it's good for America to consider some kind of form of government/socialized medicine. Again, I don't want to get political. This isn't a Republican versus Democrat thing, but it does lead to the question of, is the capitalistic medical system, here's a better way of saying it, should the medical industry in particular be a capitalistic system? Because it seems like basic healthcare should be something that everyone should have. It shouldn't be something where you're at prey for dollars and being competed over and treated like money, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree. And like, I don't know what the solution is either, but I do know that what we have does not seem to be working. And I've had similar conversations with someone else who's very much just, well, we need to pull big government out, and we need to let our medical be a free market system. And it's like, that's great in theory, but
right.
Our insurance companies hold all of the power right now.
Right.
They tell you who you can see, who you can't see. I mean, you can go see someone else, but they're not going to cover it. And if they're not going to cover it, you're not going to get that negotiated rate kind of thing, and you're going to be on the hook for the whole bill. So they are telling you who you can see. They are telling the hospitals how much they're going to pay, which is driving up the price. So yeah, it's
and aren't we moving into a situation where insurance companies are buying hospitals and insurance companies are buying pharmaceutical plants, and it's, you know, it's like it's really a huge conflict of interest. It seems like they're trying to own every part of the equation, you know.
That one I'm not as familiar with, but if you hear of an HMO, for example, those are typically one where your hospital and your insurance are the same corporation. So they do exist. And then they're saying, well, you have to go to one of our doctors for us to pay. And so there is some of that going on. Luckily, those aren't as common anymore. They were definitely back in their heyday, but they have gotten away from that.
Right. Well, you know, I feel like this topic is too big to tackle in a thing, but I would be curious if you have any kind of, like, I guess, insights into the billing side. I know that one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to do this early and I forgot, was you made a comment that somebody has treated you poorly because you work for, in their perception, you work for the health insurance industry, right? And so you're like, well, I'm the one that's trying to actually protect you and help you, but they're treating you like they're the monster because the whole health insurance system is predatory.
Yeah, back in the day, when I worked in the billing office, because I've been doing the IT side stuff for like 12 years now. So but back when I actually worked in the billing office and like I said, was the one working those denials and everything like that. I remember I would be talking to someone, just casual conversation, and they'd be like, "Where do you work?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I work for the hospital." And they would immediately go, "Oh, are you a nurse?" I'd say, "No, I work in the billing office." And 9 times out of 10, the response I got was, "Oh,
yeah,
we don't like
screw you guys." Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because like, we're the billing office. They're like, we get bills from you, and it's like,
right. And a lot of Americans fight the billing. They fight the billing.
Yeah, but it's like, my whole job when I was in that billing department was to fight insurance companies to try to get them to pay those claims before anything ever went out to the patient. So yeah, there is a whole large industry out there, because what hospital doesn't have a billing department where they are paying teams of people to fight insurance companies to get them to pay their bills?
Yeah. And it's a horrible situation because, like I said, I feel bad for you because you're right. The perception is in America, medical billing is the problem, right? So you even see the perception is, oh, I like doctors and nurses; they're the good people, but everybody else is in it for the money. But now this book made a really good argument that the doctors are horrendously abusing everybody as well. So I don't know that people's perception that the doctors are the good guys and it's just the billing system that's the problem. But it sucks that you personally get wrapped into you work for the insurance company, you work for the billing part, and all I do is spend time arguing and fighting with billing, trying to make them pay my damn bill, and you must be one of the people keeping them from paying my bill. When, like I said, like you were saying, you're actually the one trying to fight the insurance company to make them pay that bill. So
yeah, I remember having that conversation with doctors sometimes too, because sometimes something would get denied and we would need a piece of information from the doctors. And the doctors would have the same thing, like, we don't want to stop and talk to the billing office. We got things to do.
Right.
And we just have to stop them, sit them down, and be like, you understand that by the time we come to you to ask you questions for something, that we have already fought with the insurance company as far as we can and actually sat down once and showed them how much money we were recovering from insurance based on denials before we talked to them. And it was in the millions of dollars that we were fighting denials for. So yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because as a layperson, and even you with being more of an insider into the system, it's just super complex to even wrap the head around on how to have a conversation about it. And like you said, or what the solution is, because there doesn't seem to be a good solution. So I really am looking forward to this book when we get to the point where she gets to the back half of the book where and what you can do about it. I don't know. I mean, are there any things that you think a consumer can do to avoid being overcharged or not paying bills that aren't necessary, or is you get a piece of paper and the attitude is, why do you care? Your insurance is covering it, so shut the hell up. I mean, what do we do? Like, do you have any ideas, or you got to wait for that in book too?
I'm not quite sure. I'm definitely curious to see what the end of the book has to say. I will always say, like, don't be afraid to advocate for yourselves. Try to take the time to learn and understand those EOBs. Granted, I had no idea what I was looking at until I went to schooling for it. So, and even then, it still kind of takes me a bit to translate those. But yeah, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, to ask all the questions.
And the thing that sucks though is there was I don't know what chapter it was in. It was in a chapter that I already read, in which a person had called the hospital asking about what they thought was an exorbitant price on their explanation of benefits, and their attitude was, pay it or we'll send you to collections. Like it isn't a discussion you're allowed to have. Like, they're just going to be like, I'm not going to argue with it. That's the bill. Pay it or we'll send you to collections. So I don't know how you advocate for yourself when the attitude is going to be that they have the power and they'll just send you to collections and you're going to pay it whether you like it or not. Like, I don't know how you fight that system.
Yeah, and I run into that same situation. I had to go in for like a flu shot between jobs, and I had like a 2-week lapse in insurance, and I did not realize that my old insurance wasn't carrying over until the first of the month, and so I just happened to go in for that flu shot during that 2 weeks that I was uninsured. And now remember, I've had that coding experience before, and so I got the bill, and I'm like, this doesn't look right. This wasn't coded appropriately. I don't notice anything that's on it, and I called the billing office. And they would not even send it to be reviewed by the coding team because insurance wasn't involved. They were not obligated to do so. So that actually gets back to your point, to where you're like, well, okay, are all these codes to try to protect the patient or to try to protect the insurance company and the hospital? And it's like, well, that actually just answered that question, because I very specifically said this, I'm a coder. This wasn't coded appropriately. I want it reviewed by your coding team. And they just flat out said, no, we don't have to. since this isn't being submitted to insurance, it doesn't require a coding review.
Yeah. I just feel like the entire system that we have in America is predatory, and it's not in the best interest of the public and the consumer. It's about the money, and it sucks because again, I don't know that there's a fix. All I can do is I can hope that when we get to the end of an American sickness and she gets to the things of what you can do about it, that there's some actual tangible things that we can do about it. Obviously, if people in the industry can't even tell you how to quantify how much it costs to remove a mole, then how is the consumer supposed to say it doesn't cost that? So I don't know how we're going to do it, but I'm looking forward to the end of the book. And I want to thank you for coming on the show. Like I said, I don't want to spend any more of your time. I mean, you've spent an hour with me, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your opinions. And I think that I did you a bit of a disservice tonight as a host because I didn't come more prepared with direct questions. I thought we could just kind of do what we did, which is riff back and forth. And the only thing that I think is bad about that is our healthcare system is so fucked up in America that there's just so much going on. Like somehow we got to be able to structure this in a way that the average person can understand. And I don't know that that's easy to do. I don't think it's easy to do for people who are in the industry.
Right, because like I said, I will be one of the first people to admit our system is broken. It's broken, and especially the uninsured are the ones who suffer the most. And now you just made a very good point tonight about big businesses and self-employed and that whole story. That was something new for me to think about too. So like I will 100% say it's broken, but what is the answer? And like I've even talked with people about the answer. Like what if we were to go to a universal pay or to Medicare for all? And it's like, well, let's look at the benefits to that. But then as I've had that discussion with other people, they've got some very good reasons for not doing it. I've even had someone suggest that, hey, we just make it all nonprofit. Like we go and we tell the insurance companies that they have to be nonprofit, which sounds great on paper, but this book just very clearly spelled out how that might not work as well either, because, oh, look, we're not for profit, so we've got all this extra money. What do we do with it? Oh, bonuses for our CEO.
Right. Well, yeah, right. We'll pay our CEO now $10 million a year instead of $3 million a year. So we still don't have profit because that's how much it costs to have our CEO run. I mean, the not-for-profit model is a workaround. It's easy to say, hey, we didn't make profit. We'll just increase the salaries of everybody that works at the top, and so therefore there's no profit left. So, but that guy's living great, and he's got his fifth house and whatever, and a yacht and whatever. But so people are angry at the system, and it is leading to a class consciousness and all kinds of problems, and potentially people that are so upset that they're willing to go commit murder to try to make a change. As an aside, I will say that. Well, no, I don't want to get into that. There was a I don't want to get into that. So we're just going to leave that. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time tonight to come on and just talk to me about the book and stuff like that. And again, if as we go further and people watch this re-recorded live or whatever, if there were questions that they are saying, man, I wish you would have asked her about this, or I wish that she would have explained this, maybe I can then share those with you, and maybe we can get you on again to talk specifically about the ball that I missed, because I feel like I missed the ball here. So,
Yeah, and like I said, I'm partway through chapter 3 on this book, so not nearly as far. But if we come up with more things to talk about, and there's questions or anything, I will absolutely do this again.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And next time, if we do this again, I will have some written down questions that I'll share with you so that you and I both are on the same page of what we're going to talk about, and it can be far more structured. So, because I didn't realize until we were in it tonight how hard it is to talk to you and simultaneously read my paragraphs and trying to figure out what the hell my thought was. So, but I had just done a live earlier tonight, and I didn't have time to prep. I now have learned. I have learned from my mistakes. So if we get together again, we'll make it a little bit more structured.
All right.
So thank you for coming on, and thanks for everybody who listened. And I hope that you will continue to follow along with the book series that we have on YouTube called Luigi's Bookshelf. We're reviewing the book An American Sickness. That's what Angie and I have been talking about tonight. We're on chapter 6. I'm reading chapter 6 right now. I'll be doing a review of that chapter coming up. Angie, have a good night, and thank you for coming on again.